Polls.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we thank you for being here, Barnaby.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into something called seller carry financing, specifically how it works with mobile home park sales. Yeah, people are calling it a simple strategic win-win for these kinds of deals. Our mission today is to really dig into why. Why is it seen that way?
Exactly. It's more than just, moving money around. It's really about control, about speed, and getting better returns than you might typically see. Definitely moves beyond just standard bank loans.
So the big question we want to explore for you listening is this. How does it actually benefit both the seller acting as the bank, maybe even more than just a straightforward cash deal? Okay, let's unpack this then before we get into the strategy part, maybe just the basics. What exactly is seller carry? And what's the seller actually doing here?
Sure. It's actually pretty intuitive when you cut through the finance talk. Seller carry just means the seller, the person who owns the property and knows it best, finances part of the purchase price themselves.
Instead of a bank doing the whole loan.
Right. The buyer might still get a bank loan for part of it, or maybe not, but the seller carries a piece. They hold a promissory note, basically an IOU from the buyer. And this is key. That note is secured by the mobile home park.
Ah, so the park itself is the collateral.
Precisely.
Huh?
It's a strategy. The seller isn't doing a favor. They're making a calculated move, essentially becoming a lender with their own asset as security. They're deciding to get their equity out over time, maybe with interest, instead of all at once.
Okay, and let's use the example from our sources to make it concrete. Say an MHP sells for, $800,000. How does the money actually work in a seller carry situation?
Okay, yeah, good example. So typically you'd see a few steps. First, the buyer puts down a decent chunk of cash, maybe $150,000 in that case.
Right, skin in the game.
Exactly. Then second step, the seller finances the rest. So the seller creates a note for, let's say, $650,000.
Okay.
Third, the seller starts getting payments on that note, usually monthly, predictable income. And fourth, at the end of the agreed term, maybe 5 years, the buyer has to pay off that $650,000 note. Usually they refinance with a bank then, or maybe they just pay the lump sum, the balloon payment.
Got it. And the income stream for the seller is pretty attractive right away, isn't it? That $650,000 note, if it's at, say, 6% interest only.
Yeah, using that example, 6% interest only on $650,000. That works out to $3,250 per month.
Wow.
Every single month, flowing directly to the seller. It's passive income, no more dealing with park management, and it's secured by the property they just sold.
Okay, so that income piece is clear. But this is where it gets really interesting, right? The strategic reasons why a seller would choose this. It's not just about getting the deal done.
It's exactly right. It's really about optimizing their return. I mean, think about it. Sellers using this can often get interest rates, let's say 6%, 8%.
Which is pretty good compared to...
Well, compare that to putting your money in a high-yield savings account, or maybe a CD right now.
Yeah.
You might be lucky to get, 3%? Maybe a bit more, but probably not double.
Right, so you're potentially doubling your yield. Safely?
Safely, because it's backed by the real estate. Plus, you get that predictable cash flow month after month. No bank delays, no management hassle, just income.
And there's something specific about mobile home parks here too, isn't there? Why this strategy fits well in that sector.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Banks, they can sometimes be a bit hesitant with MHPs, especially if the park has older infrastructure, maybe private utilities, even if it's making good money.
Okay.
The seller, though, they already know the park inside out. They understand the pipes, the septic, whatever it is. They don't have those underwriting hungles a bank might. So their willingness to finance is actually more valuable to a qualified buyer.
So that flexibility helps attract serious buyers who can move fast. And the cash flow beats the alternatives. But there's another huge piece, maybe the biggest, the tax side.
Oh, the tax advantage is huge. Capital gains tax deferral. It's critical.
How does that work?
Okay, so if you sell that $800,000 park for all cash, and let's say you have a big capital gain, you owe taxes on that entire gain in one go, usually the next tax year. That can be a massive, massive tax bill hitting you all at once.
Ouch.
But with seller carry, it's treated as an installment sale. This is IRS rules. You only pay capital gains tax each year based on the principal portion of the payments you actually receive that year.
So if it's interest only for 5 years, like in the example.
Right. If it's interest only, you're receiving mostly interest, not principal, until that final balloon payment. So that big capital gains tax hit gets spread out over the 5 years or however long the term is. It makes tax planning much, much easier. You manage the liability over time.
That makes a ton of sense. You smooth out the tax hit instead of taking it all up front. Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. I'm sure some listeners are thinking this. If you take all the cash, yeah, you pay tax, but the deal is done, the risk is gone. If you carry the note, you still have risk, right? What if the buyer messes up? What if they stop paying that $3,250 a month?
That's the core trade-off, absolutely. And it's a valid concern.
Aren't you just risking having to foreclose, take the park back, maybe after it's been run down? That sounds messy.
It can be, but the key mitigation here is control and security. Remember, the seller holds the note and the MHP is the collateral. If the buyer defaults, yes, foreclosure is a process, but you have a clear legal right to take back the asset. And crucially, the seller sets the terms up front. They decide the interest rate, the down payment amount, that the $150K down payment gives the buyer serious skin in the game, and the length of the loan. You structure the deal to minimize your risk from the start.
So you're essentially underwriting the buyer and the deal yourself based on your knowledge of the asset.
Precisely. You vet the buyer, you demand a solid down payment, and your ultimate safety net is getting back an asset you already understand well. It's a calculated risk, not like just throwing money into the stock market. You're being paid well, through the interest, to take on that calculated risk.
Okay, that reframes the risk significantly. You're trading immediate high-tax burden risk for a manageable collateralized credit risk while earning income.
That's a good way to put it.
All right, let's flip the coin. We see why it's great for the seller. But why do buyers go for this? And how does their enthusiasm maybe help the seller get a better price?
Buyers often love this structure. Number one reason, speed.
Right, avoiding the banks again.
Exactly. Skipping that potentially 6-month slog with bank underwriters, appraisals, committees, it lets them close fast. In a competitive market for good parks, speed is incredibly valuable. It's worth paying for.
And that leads to the second point, pricing.
Yeah, because the seller is offering this convenient, fast financing, buyers are often willing to pay closer to the seller's asking price. They might value the flexible terms and speed more than squeezing out the last few percentage points on price.
So rather than haggle over, say, $50,000 on the price, they'd rather pay the full price but get the seller financing and close next month.
Often, yes. Especially experienced operators who know the time and hassle involved with traditional financing. It changes the whole negotiation dynamic.
Which is what the sources called a relationship-based exit, right? It's less adversarial.
Absolutely. It fosters collaboration. You attract buyers who value transparency and partnership because they need the seller's cooperation on the financing. The seller, in turn, wants a competent buyer who will manage the park well and make the payments.
It aligns incentives.
It really does. And think about the seller's payoff again from our example. Over that 5-year term, just the interest income alone is $195,000. Pure passive profit generated while the note is still secured by the park itself. That's money they wouldn't have seen in an all-cash deal.
That's a powerful stream of income.
So if we zoom out, look at the bigger picture. This whole mechanism, it really represents alignment. It signals trust between buyer and seller.
Because the seller's ongoing income depends on the buyer succeeding.
Exactly. The seller wants the buyer to do well. So for the seller, you've got control, you've got that higher yield, you've got the tax deferral, and you often maintain your asking price.
And for the buyer?
For the buyer, it's flexibility, it's speed to close, and it means they can focus their capital and energy right away on running and improving the park, building their own equity, instead of just jumping through bank hoops for months.
So everyone kind of leaves the closing table feeling good. It's structured for shared success, not a zero-sum game. Both sides are, like you said, rowing in the same direction for the life of that note.
That's the ideal outcome, yeah. Less friction, more collaboration.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive today, seller carry isn't just a fallback option. It's clearly a sophisticated strategy. Great for generating income, managing risk through that collateral, and really smart tax planning turns a one-time sale into potentially years of income.
And thinking about that, it does raise a really interesting final question for you, the listener, to ponder. When you're weighing your options, say an all-cash offer versus setting up a seller carry note,
Yeah.
what's the real cost of that immediate liquidity from the all-cash deal? You get the cash, sure, but you take that huge tax hit right away.
Yeah.
Is getting all the cash up front truly worth giving up, say, 5 years of guaranteed high-yield passive income at $195,000 in our example, which is secured by property, intimately.
That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Trading immediate cash versus secured high-yield income over time. Definitely something to think about for your next transaction. Thanks for diving deep with us today.